Continuing in our account about Raymond Davis, a 15-year-old murderer I evaluated, I'd like you to step inside the courtroom with me as this young man faces certification for his crime as an adult. Over the next few weeks, I completed my formal evaluation of Raymond and submitted a written report to the court. In turn, the prosecution and defense attorneys were provided copies. The strategies of the prosecutor and defense attorneys were rather simple. Phil Celestine, the defense attorney, promoted the theme that Raymond was psychologically hindered, yet he also had redeeming qualities. Using the exact same sources of data, Robin Murphy, the prosecutor, planned to argue that precisely because Raymond is challenged and deprived, he poses a significant and continuing risk of harm to society. His killing act, she would argue, persuasively proved his decadence. The three of us agreed about one thing. Raymond Davis had conflicted feelings. Frankly, all of us are in conflict. In fact, you and I have been in conflict all of our collective lives. Now, mind you, when I speak of conflict, I'm certainly not referencing conflict that involves homicide. But conflict shapes us, for better or worse. Conflicts are turning points, and they demand resolve, one way or the other. Robin Murphy went first and called several witnesses to the stand. Then she called me to testify. After promising the good Judge Collier that I would tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, Robin formally addressed me, speaking as if we were strictly professional associates. "Dr. Carter," she said, "I'm Robin Murphy, strictly for the record. We know one another, do we not, and have jointly worked on cases in the past." "Yes, ma'am," I responded. "Would you please state your full name for the record and for the court reporter?" "William Lee Carter," I said, looking at the court reporter, who winked as if to say she had already typed my name before I announced it. With the agreement of Phil Celestine, Robin stipulated my credentials to the court, sparing me the pain of having the professional equivalent of name, rank, and serial number. Thank goodness. "The court so recognizes Dr. Carter as an expert witness," announced Judge Carter. He looked at a computer screen, and I wondered what he was reading. "May I approach, Your Honor?" Robin asked. She then walked up to the stand. "Dr. Carter, I'm handing you what's been marked State's Exhibit Number 5. Do you recognize this as a true and accurate copy of a psychological evaluation report you prepared regarding the defendant?" "Yes, I do." I glanced at Raymond for the first time. Poor guy. His soul plainly shivered like a wet puppy. On page 7, you listed 3 diagnostic codes. The first is conduct disorder, early onset. Then you listed a mood disorder. And finally, an impulse control disorder. Can you explain to the court what a conduct disorder is and the significance of designating it as having an early onset? "Yes," I said. "Juveniles with early onset conduct disorder typically have a lengthy history of violating rules and infringing on others' rights and needs. They often display behavior problems like in their elementary school years that create conflict with parents, school authority, their peers. The younger the child with a conduct disorder, the greater the likelihood of later problems, such as aggression, fighting, even acts as heinous as murder," interrupted Robin, emphasizing the point. "Is that correct?" "Yes," I responded. "You noted on page 2 that the defendant's family life was horrible. My word, not yours. But would you agree with me that his home life was just that? Horrible?" "Yes," I said, "it was bad." "Briefly then, can you identify the primary ways the defendant's home life hurt him?" "I think all of us who studied Raymond," I said, "know and understand that his parents, who were young teenagers at the time of his birth, were not only ill-equipped to raise a child, they were disturbed in their own right. Raymond grew up in poverty. He had no consistency in caregivers. He bounced around from one failed relative placement to another and ultimately entered institutional life, foster care in psychiatric hospitals, juvenile facilities." "Dr. Carter," Robin said, "would you agree with me that this young man is a long way from normal?" "Yes," I said. "He has normal and even favorable traits, but they're not well developed." "So his role models," she asked, "essentially taught him at a very young age to act out? Is that a fair statement?" Unfortunately, yes, I conceded. He was and is a frustrated youth. Thus, continued Robin, there's not much chance, is there, that he'll ever be a high-functioning citizen as an adult. I said, his chances for normalcy are weakened compared to youth who came from better life situations, but I'm hesitant to concede that he'll never approach normalcy. Fair enough, Robin said. If you'll turn to page 6 of your report, I'd like you to share with the court your risk assessment of the defendant. You concluded that he's a high risk for future misconduct, did you not? Yes. How did you arrive at that risk rating? I explained. Raymond has many markers common to teens who persist in a pattern of delinquency, including long-standing aggressive acting out. Those elements include a troubled family life, instability in parent figures, exposure to abuse, neglect, weak attachments to caregivers and peers, lack of inclusion in positive peer circles, a documented history of anger problems, and so on. Unfortunately, as you pointed out, Raymond had few advantages in his childhood and his personality development has suffered. So the prosecutor asked, "Are you telling the court Raymond Davis has a personality disorder?" "No, I can't say that. It's too early to make that diagnosis. He's still a work in progress." Shifting gears, the prosecutor asked me, "Did you perform an intelligence test on the defendant?" "Yes, I did. He scored well within the normal range. He has firm intelligence." "May I take that finding," she said, "that Raymond Davis is smart enough then to know the difference between right and wrong?" "Yes, he does." "So," the prosecutor continued, "just as an adult knows it's wrong to kill a person, this young man knows it's wrong to kill. Agreed?" "Agreed." I watched as Robin made check marks on a legal notepad. One by one, as she elicited responses from me, she crossed off all the required elements necessary to certify Raymond Davis as an adult. Swiftly turning my mind to a day and age when I was at Raymond's position in life, I imagined myself as a 9th or 10th grade student at Lakeshore High School in the greater Atlanta area, which is where I spent my formative years. I suspect that if I had known Raymond Davis, he would have intimidated me. Regrettably, I doubt that I would have befriended him. My teenage self would have been scared of him. That's sad, isn't it? When I was a boy, I endured conflict, virtually all of it packing no more than a modest punch, though. I got spanked more than I wanted, got turned down by a few pretty girls, got drubbed in games, changed schools. I lost both my grandfathers within an 8-week span of time. And I watched in dismay as a couple of my troubled but long-standing boyhood friends traipsed down a trail I never dreamed they'd go. When I'm in a foolhardy mood, I sometimes play what if with myself. I wonder about the choices I might have made if I had lived similarly to the Raymond Davises of my day. Who knows? But surely, I would do things different if I were a youth for a second time. What do you think about this statement? Conflict is an inevitable and even necessary fact of life. To wish we could avoid conflict is to doom ourselves to emptiness, loneliness, pointlessness, and vanity. Conflict changes life, for better or worse. Robin Murphy stood before the judge. I passed the witness. Judge Collier dipped his head and looked at Phil Celestine, assuming he knew the drill, which of course he did. Phil started out. "Dr. Carter, we too know one another." "Correct," I said. "Have you ever put together a jigsaw puzzle?" I was taken aback a bit by the question, but I said, "Yes." He continued, "Let's suppose you're working a jigsaw puzzle with, say, 80 pieces, one piece for every year of life. Each year, on a designated date, you add a piece to the puzzle board. Are we clear on the analogy?" "Yes, I'm following you." So with 15 of 80 puzzle pieces in place, is it fair to say we're far from gaining a good view of the picture being constructed? "Yes, that's fair." "So it's impossible," the defense attorney said, to state today precisely who Raymond Davis will be tomorrow, or the day after that, or the year after that, regardless of what might be projected on a risk analysis." "True," I said. You You evaluate people in prisons, don't you? Phil asked me. Yes. Do you like that work? Very much. He asked, have you ever evaluated a man or a woman who's been in prison many years after killing someone? Yes, quite a few actually. Before you see these people, the defense counsel asked, do you read records about their history or their offense? Oh yes, always. He asked, have you ever evaluated a murderer 20, 25, 30 years after the fact who is exactly the same person he or she was when the murder took place? No. Of course they're not the same, the defense counsel went on. None of us are the same now as we were when we were kids. Isn't that true? True. Dr. Carter, Ms. Murphy made it plain in her questions to you that my client is an imbalanced boy, didn't she? I'm not sure if she used that word, I said, but yes, it fits. But this boy's only 15 years old, the defense counsel said. Is it not possible, even probable, that as he ages, he'll interpret his past differently than he does now? Isn't it morally incomprehensible to assume he'll be the same in 10 or 20 years as he is today? Phil was no longer asking me questions. He was talking to the judge. This skilled defense attorney was making good points. To repeat what I said a moment ago, we live conflicted lives. To act as we do because a crummy parent or troubled friends or a gang or a lawyer or a judge or a shrink says there's an easy way out, that's not a good explanation. To forge an identity that's real and meaningful requires push and pull. Focusing on Phil's question, I responded, yes, Mr. Celestine, I agree that we're mistaken to think we can accurately predict the future. Precisely, he said. Dr. Carter, are you familiar with research on brain maturation and its effects on a teenager's decision-making capacity? Yes, I am. So you're aware then that developmental psychologists inform us that a young person's underdeveloped cognitive skills affect him in multiple ways. I'm aware of that, such as his ability to control his impulses or manage his emotions, see life from different angles, plan for the future. Is that correct, Dr. Carter? Yes, it is. So even though, as you noted under Ms. Murphy's direct examination, my client knows the difference between right and wrong, it's also appropriate to assert that Raymond Davis does not have full capacity to make reasoned choices. Would you agree with me? I would. Are you aware that in 2012, the Supreme Court issued a ruling, Miller versus Alabama, opining that when considering punishment options for teenage murderers, like Raymond Davis, it's improper to hold adolescents to the same degree of responsibility that we do adults? Yes, I said, I'm familiar with that ruling. Phil continued, there's a reason juveniles are not entrusted with the same privileges and responsibilities of an adult, isn't there, Dr. Carter? Yes. Because teenagers lack maturity, their irresponsible conduct is not as morally reprehensible as that of an adult. True? True, I said. Do you realize I just paraphrased Justice Stevens, who wrote the majority opinion in a 1988 Supreme Court case, a ruling that abolished the death penalty for defendants who committed a capital offense before the age of 18? No, I wasn't aware of that. I realized that Phil was cleverly laying the groundwork for his closing argument before the court. Beyond that, he was not only speaking to me and the judge, but to Robin Murphy and Robin's immediate boss, the first assistant district attorney, who was in the gallery taking notes. Phil was speaking to him too. No one was especially anxious to see this case go to trial, so it was tacitly hoped by all that a plea agreement could be arranged. Following a few more perfunctory questions, Phil passed me as a witness. He sat down by his client, patted the boy's hand, then took a handkerchief to mop his sticky brow. He'd done his job well. Judge Collier thanked me and told me I was released from my subpoena. Determining I would remain in the court, by the end of the afternoon, I learned at the same time Raymond did that he was designated a certified adult. Raymond was proclaimed a bona fide 15-year-old man. To his credit, Raymond took the news like a big boy. I'm psychologist Lee Carter. As we move our story to an eventual close, I want you to hear one more time from Raymond's mother, and then from him one more time. I'll look forward to being with you again soon.